Hey, everybody, welcome. So great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. Thank you. We got a great lineup for you today. When we think about this, I was just talking to my featured guest today a little bit before the show, Tayannah Lee McQuillar. And I was talking with her. We're going to be talking about the book, Astrology for Mystics. This is a book that explores the 4th, 8th, and 12th house. And this is exciting. But what's the question mark? We were just chit-chatting a little bit before the show. And Benny, one of the things that she asked was, how you doing? And I said, whatever is going on in the houses, wherever they are, whatever movement, whatever alignment, it really is good. And I thought about the answer to that, and we're going to dive deeper into it today. And I think about this a lot. I think about, what if you've gone through a life not so fancy? What if you've had a life that probably challenged you beyond the point of anything you thought you can return back from? What if you had ups and downs and sideways and just swirling around, spiraling up and down? What if your life was more like a roller coaster ride than a slide and glide? Do you think maybe some things lined up exactly the way they were supposed to, exactly at the depth they were supposed to build up whatever muscle you were going to need down the road, as my mama used to say? And today, in this incredible book, and I want to thank you again for this, our friends at Inner Traditions, thank you so much, Manzanita. Thank you for this book. And today, Astrology for Mystics. Now, for those of you that say, I'm not a mystic. I'm not, somebody said to me not too long ago, Pat, you keep saying we're all mystics. I'm not a mystic. I'm a mistake. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't even know what to do with that. But today we're going to take a look at this. I want to tell you a little bit about my fabulous guest today, tarot reader, researcher of religion, esoteric mysticism, the author of several books, and today bringing to the forefront the deep dive, as I like to say, to look at the depths of the water houses in your natal chart. Tayannah, great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So somebody said to me, I want to start out with a little question, right? But I want to give you a framework for it. Someone said to me not too long ago, I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but they were talking about the fact when they look at a chart and they look at the solar return, they see different things in it, but rarely do we talk about where things land in the houses. Rarely do we say, oh, my moon is in Capricorn, but we don't say. So tell me, from your perspective, the importance to understand astrology at this level, right? Just to get you to understand how the dynamics of houses work. Tell us about this from your perspective.
Well, you have, each, for those that are listening, all right, so the zodiac is like a pie. It's divided into 12 slices, right? And those slices are called houses, okay? And each house represents different areas of your life. And so there can be different zodiac signs in those houses and different planets in those houses. So the house itself will have a particular meaning or a fixed meaning, but a particular zodiac sign or planet can change the energy of that house, okay? So for example, you may have a apartment or a house or something, and it's yours, right? It has your things in it, your energy in it. But let's say, I don't know, you have a house guest, right? There are some house guests that are going to bring a totally different energy to your home when they come and visit, right? Your mom versus your friend versus your eccentric coworker or whatever. Even though it's your stuff in your house and it has that particular meaning to you, there are other other entities that can come into your space and change that space or the energy of that space, how you communicate in that space, right?
Right.
Because there are certain, that's why certain people you don't want in your house, right? Or you
That's
would
right.
meet them somewhere else. You know, can we meet this person at Starbucks? I don't want their vibe in the house, okay? Or you want to separate that energy. So at any rate, to answer your question, to understand it at that level is kind of narrowing things down, okay? We're talking about a fixed meaning, but we're personalizing it more. How does this particular planet or sign affect your experience? Not everybody's, okay? And that's what this book is all about.
And
Personalizing one's
and
experience.
yeah, and I love the way you just described that, because this is really kind of cool that we can break this down so that we understand what it has to do with a life path, what it has to do with the decisions and choices we make, right? And you're
Right.
absolutely right. I mean, when you say, oh man, I'm going to have a party at my house, do you go through your list and say, let me ask the people that caused me the most angst and anxiety, let me have them go to the top of the list? We don't do that, right?
Right.
um, but even with that, this particular book takes a look at water houses, and in particular in the natal chart. Tell us about water houses, because there may be some people that get a sense of this, but tell us about these houses and let's take a look at what each of them means.
Okay, so again, now we're going back to that pie chart, right?
Yeah.
So you have those 12 slices. Four of those slices are going to be under the domain of earth, four under air, four under water, and four under fire. So my book is only talking about the fourth house, the eighth house, and the 12th house, right? So those are the water houses that's under the domain of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So you have the fourth house, which is all things related, what I call goddess related, okay? Your spiritual foundation, possibly, information about, your mother, your whether your spiritual temperament, okay, whether you'll be more inclined to be more conventional or more eccentric, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So your connection to the land, your connection to your ancestors, okay? And then you have the eighth house, which is the house of transformation. And that's key because you need to know how you deal with change. Everybody's different. Some people can go through something and they just snap right back, right? And then some people, it takes years, if ever, to get over something. Okay, so you need to know how you deal with transitions, how you deal with beginnings and endings, in my opinion, in order to also pace yourself spiritually. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off. But that's that house. Your interest in the occult or lack of interest in the occult can be seen in that house as well. Then you have the 12th house, which is your house of service, which is the house that represents what needs to be sacrificed in order for you to grow spiritually. Now, in the natal chart, obviously these combinations, I mean, the combinations are limitless, right? In terms of, so that's what makes all of us very, very special. It's not just the fingerprint. Our natal charts are really unique. I don't care how similar, two people's charts can be. You will have something that is uniquely yourself. So that those are the houses, and obviously those things are important to know in order to grow. You want to know how you deal with transformation. You want to know your temperament. You want to know what you need to do in order to get to the next level if you are a mystic or you consider yourself a mystic.
Yeah. And I love this because I've been really looking deeply into not just my natal chart, but really understanding more about exactly what you said, and looking at, why in my chart do I have a whole bunch of things going on in that third quadrant, right? Why is there just a bunch of things going on in there, including my sun and my moon? And, when I hear about that, I don't quite hear about it the way you're talking about it, because I really love the idea of talking about water and water signs. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about from your perspective is, here we are, right? And you don't really have to know a ton about astrology, from my opinion, to understand the book and to understand, what the significance of the water houses are. But I want to ask you this question because I'm not a person that has had a lot of experience with water. But the minute I moved to Seattle and the West Coast, I changed.
Mm.
And I don't know if I can explain this to you in that way, but there's something about water. And I wonder if it's because of the lack of water in my chart. I mean, the minute I stepped off the plane to go to Hawaii, my first time to Hawaii, I was different. I changed.
Mm.
And, how do these feelings within us point us or guide us to connecting to these water houses and our life path? Because I can't imagine myself now not living by water. And I'm a girl from the Bronx. I grew up in cement. And
Mm.
yes, I grew
Yeah.
up over there. But let me just be clear. I also grew up in the part of the Bronx. People may not think about this. New York City is surrounded by water, right?
It's an island.
And I totally forget that. I totally
Mhm.
forget that. But talk about these water houses and the draw, the attraction, the pull. Even if we don't know what's going on, but when we read your book, we will. There's something intuitively that calls to us, isn't there?
Well, we are obviously, we are formed in water. So, you're going to just have that's our first sensory experience, is that sensation of being in water, of being in silence in water as well. And like I said in the book, this is why, billions of dollars are made by, travel industries, they want to recreate this relaxing, therapeutic, experience for people. There's a reason why, people flock to beaches and they flock to, waterfalls and all these other places. Okay. And I believe that it's because, of this, this very innate attraction that we have, and also just the knowledge that
Yeah.
we need water. We're just completely dependent on this element for our survival and for our comfort, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And you cover that in the spiritual history of water, which I thought was brilliant. If you grow up Catholic, you walk into a church and the first thing you go for is the holy water, right? I mean, it's so natural, but we also have water where, as you point out in the book, we're talking about floods and we're talking about, the cleansing power of water and water spirits and goddesses. You've really brought that to the forefront. But I want to talk with you when we come back from break. In case people don't know, this is kind of cool. The element of water, about the water signs, the element of water is associated with several signs. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the signs, we're going to take a look at the houses, then we're going to get a deeper dive to look at now what. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. We're talking about astrology for mystics, exploring the occult depths of the water houses in your natal chart with my very special guest, Tayannah Lee McQuillar. Can you tell folks, first of all, how they find out about you, and then how did you get a copy of this really good book, intriguing book, if I should say?
Thank you so much. The book can be purchased at
Mm-hmm.
innertraditions.com, the publisher, or you can find it on Amazon or your local metaphysical bookstore. You can also find me on Instagram. That's the best way. And you can find me at Tayannah Lee McQuillar, exactly just how it's spelled. And you can email me if you're interested in getting a reading done, or interested on Astrology for Mystics workshops. I have one coming up in July. And I can send you information and other information about my events at tlmcquillar@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And by the way, we're giving copies away of Astrology for Mystics. And Benny, let's go ahead and do one now. 1-800-930-2819. 1-800-930-2819. Thank you for joining me here today. One of the things I was referencing before the break, sort of to kick us off, is to really take a look at what many people may or may not know. And that is the part of the book where you talk about signs and houses, because, you know, we have signs, we have houses, and then there is an interaction of them. And can you talk about the significance of looking at both signs and houses? Sometimes we don't look at the houses. You know, quite a few people just say, I'm a this or I'm a that, or, here's Mercury or here's Jupiter. But we don't necessarily look at where they are, where are they placed, and what does it mean if they are placed in these water houses. So let's talk a little bit about that, and really talk about these water houses, fourth, eighth, and 12th.
Okay. I don't know. That's a lot. Okay, so let me see if I can just start with eighth house. Okay. So the eighth house, for example, is the house of transformation, like I said. So I'll use myself as an example. I have Libra in that house of transformation. Okay. I deal with change very well. Okay. I also have Pluto in that house, but let's just stick to the Libra for now,
Yeah.
just because we brought up the signs. Okay. So I'm pretty cool with things coming to an end, as long as, fairness is important to me, being treated fairly. I'm really good when there's like no one's fault, like something just has to end, whether it be like a physical death that has nothing to do with someone being murdered or something. I mean, like everything just ending at its own accord. I'm very good with that. Some people are
Yeah.
just not going to change at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Totally.
Self is Scorpio, right? Which is dealing with that transformation, which is dealing with that kind of harsh reality, right? The whole stereotype of Scorpio, right? But then I have Libra superimposed on that house. So that's how I process how I process information in terms of, endings. Okay. I'm not going to like a lot of gory imagery. Libra is very, they like things pretty, they like things neat, right?
Yeah.
So people might think, oh my God, because I'm a Scorpio. And so it's like, oh, you must be really into really dark, gory imagery, or, horror movies or whatever. And that's actually not the case because of the Libra, in Venus in the eighth house. I may like dark subject matter or occult subject matter, but it cannot be ugly. Like, so for example,
Right.
you'll see the darkness play out. I love the Twilight Zone, for example,
Yeah.
psychological horror. And
Right.
what I don't necessarily want to see somebody's kidney come out of their left ear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So this is what I'm saying. So these there might be a sign there that may be known for something, a particular thing, but the sign that you have, your natal chart, that will change the energy of the house, because Libra, like I said, using my example, is going to change the energy there. So then let's say if there was a planet or a couple of planets, you see what I'm saying? It's just,
Yeah.
it's out there. You have to continue to see what gets switched on, what gets switched off, or rather I should say turned up or turned down. Because there's certain things that may be in the house, that, let's say I had Aries in that house instead. Maybe I might, like seeing people, with their head split open and the brain falling out. So, who knows? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
You have to look at you. You know what I'm saying? You have to pay attention to how you express in the world.
Yeah, and that's what I said to you before when I really didn't connect to my eighth house, but I started to look at my eighth house, right? And as I was looking at my eighth house, I didn't look at it. I didn't look at the what was going on in there from an eighth house perspective. But when I look at it now and I say, what is in that eighth house, right? And I look at Mercury, the planet, Capricorn, the sign, sitting in my eighth house, then Venus, the sign Sagittarius, sitting in my eighth house. It really brings up a new interest for me, right? It isn't just Mercury, Capricorn, Venus, Sagittarius. It's now they're in my eighth house. So it calls us to look at this almost three dimensionally, right?
Right. Right.
That's the cool part.
Linear, right. People will go online and say, okay, well, I see my natal chart, I'll have this, and they'll read the definition in blocks instead of looking at the chart holistically. Well, how does this affect this over here? You know what I mean? It's just a matter of getting more in tune, because we're all very complex beings. Okay, we may not see ourselves that way, but we are.
And you know what else? I really didn't look at this until I was reading your book. And then I all of a sudden didn't even realize I had anything in my fourth house. Just saying. I didn't even notice it. And I don't know why that is, because there's so much energy in my chart up in that top quadrant. And I just looked at this and I said, oh, wait a minute. I got something in the fourth house. I got Pluto Leo. I got Pluto, the planet, and Leo, the sign. And so I started to read in your book. But what I really did notice is you're right about this. If you stop at the sign and the planet, you're going to be missing the whole idea of the mystic interaction, I think, don't you?
Well, it's all about centralizing your narrative over whatever, so-called experts, are writing. Yes, learn, if you like, learn, okay, learn the conventional information, learn the, kind of generic definitions you would read about what it means to have Leo in the fourth house. Obviously, you want to start there, right? But you also, or Pluto in the fourth house as well, but you also want to do your own investigation. Okay, I really want people to remember that is a key message of the book, is to take the wisdom that's out there, but to personalize it. So figure out how this different phenomenon works for you. How does it play out in your life? So for example, if there's a Mercury retrograde coming up, don't just, okay, you can read your favorite astrologer's breakdown. Okay, this is how you're going to be feeling. This is, okay, that's their opinion, but don't start projecting that out there, that's how you have to act, because guess what? You may have Mercury in a particular sign, in a particular place, you know what I mean? And it's going to be a totally different experience for you. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? And just to never lose sight of you. Start to take, have a little astrology phenomenon journal. Write down, okay, during eclipses in Leo, during eclipses in Virgo, whatever, because Mercury especially is a good place to start, because that phenomenon, it recurs like several times a year, and also lunar signs, okay? So start paying attention to what happens to you on these particular days. Maybe I just realized when the moon is in Cancer, my mother tends to call me at 2:00 in the afternoon. If you really start journaling, you'll start to see some kind of pattern for you that is not true. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's garbage to read these generic definitions, because it's just a scaffold. But some people actually project their entire reality from external sources. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to help people that are interested in doing. Again, this book is astrology for mystics. It's not astrology for everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody is what is already out there. This is astrology for people that are interested in integrating their own life experience into the narrative that is called astrology.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something really interesting too, to really prove the point of what you just said. When we come back, I started to look at this a little bit about Sagittarius in the 8th house. And by the way, when you go through the book, this takes you beautifully through each of the signs in each of the houses. So each of the water houses. So if you look in the 4th house and you see what signs in there, if you look in the 8th house, which I'm in right now, I have 2 signs in the 8th house. How do I interpret this? When we come back, we're going to take a look at Sagittarius in the 8th house and Capricorn, and Capricorn in the 8th house. What does that look like? What does it mean? And how is it showing up or / being acknowledged right now? We're going to take a look at this, everybody. Let's take a short break. 2 of the books are gone. I think maybe we have one left, 1-800-930-2819. We got a lot to talk about. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, Tayannah Lee McQuillar joining me here today. Fabulous book, Astrology for Mystics, exploring the occult depths of the water houses in your natal chart. And we've been talking about what the water houses mean. But what happens if you find yourself looking at your chart and and you're looking and you're thinking, well, they've just talked to me about this fourth house and they're telling me that that fourth house is all right. Well, wait a minute. That's one of those water houses. And then you take a look and you say, well, wait a minute, I got something going on in my fourth house. Or you take a look at some of the other ones. You took at the look at the eighth house and you say, well, I've got something going on there. What Tayannah does in the book is she invites you to look at each of the signs that you're interested in, right, on your chart and say, what does this look like? And we're going to just use an example, just a random example. We're just going to take a look at in the book. She talks about, I relate to this, talks about Sagittarius in the eighth house. So we're just going to look at that for a minute. And what happens in the book, you get to take a peek at how you are relating to sexual intimacy, self-image, what your secret power is. And then what about transformation and endings? And so when you take a look at each of these signs and where they land in your chart, there's a beautiful, beautiful description of them. If you look at Capricorn, for example, in the eighth house, you'll get a description and you'll get an idea of this. And this is so important. Now, Tayannah, let me just say this. If you don't have a sign like in one of these water houses, you just don't have a sign. Like I don't have anything in my 12th house.
You mean a planet?
Yeah.
You have to have a sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But no
it's fine. I
planets.
don't have one either.
Yeah. Um, but this is, you've laid this out so that people can really look at a dynamic that's going on and ask themselves, how do I relate to that? Right? So if I look at Capricorn in the eighth house and I'm reading about what it says, right? Um, it's fascinating. Can I read from your book?
Please.
Okay. Sexual intimacy. Many eighth house Capricorns immensely enjoy some form of bondage or domination. It's not uncommon for them to enjoy being in control in the bedroom. Find a discreet lover who you feel safe with to explore possibilities. People with this placement are focused, devoted, and passionate. It would be wise for those with Capricorn in the eighth house to break up with people they're dating if they prove to be flaky or unreliable. You like to be organized and appreciate people who keep their word. So ignoring red flags will only end in frustration and inevitably separation anyway. That is a lot of information. And it really is so, poignant to help people understand this, right? I was really struck by the secret power. And I love that you include these secret powers, right? Tell us a little bit about the secret power in all of these descriptions that you put in.
Well, there are certain, capabilities that we all have. I think that people underestimate that power in general, and that's why I wanted to include this because there are certain. I mean, this is all just alchemy, right? Air, earth, fire, and water, and how these different elements, mix and mingle in order to make us all unique, and that's what the natal chart is all about. So you have depending on our alchemical combination, right, you will have most likely certain capabilities over others, okay? And that's why I decided to include that in the book, just playing with the different combinations and what that could possibly mean. Again, the book is just a scaffold for your own consideration. You may see yourself, a lot of people do see themselves in these descriptions. But again, you also have to take a look at the entire chart and how these things relate to your own life experiences. So let's say, yeah, you may have a propensity if you have Capricorn in the eighth house for bondage and domination, but wonder if you were sexually assaulted 10 years ago, okay? Or you cannot take away a person's life experience. Okay, it's nature and nurture that creates who we are and how we perceive reality. Okay, so then somebody may look at the book and say, well, hell, I don't like that stuff. Okay, but maybe they are not taking into consideration that time they saw, their mother's boyfriend slap her upside the head or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So these things can get turned up, they can get turned down, depending also on our narrative. Again, we can never remove ourselves and what we've seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and experienced. We just cannot.
Yeah, and I love that you've included this part about the secret power. And it's really fun. When I first read this, I'll read it out loud if I can. People with Capricorn natals are much more comfortable with dark side than most. Their own dark tendencies in the darker parts of the supernatural world, supernatural and the world. They are also extremely talented when it comes to creating rituals and initiation procedures. And I read that and I really thought, okay, that's really interesting. Because for me, as a very young child, I have been fascinated with the supernatural. I've been fascinated with, things that most people wouldn't be interested in at a very young age. Anytime that I hear that there's going to be a new Godzilla movie, I'm like, I cannot wait to watch that. I mean, even if it's like hokey Godzilla versus King Kong. Um, X-Files. I don't think I've ever missed an episode of the X-Files. And it's fascinating when I'm reading this and I think back upon that. And something interesting. If I am having a really busy day or really busy week or doing a lot of calls or doing a lot of shows, when I go to take a little breath and watch television, I'm not going to tune in to Family Feud. That wouldn't be my first go-to. It would
Right,
be to look at something that is going to take me to another dimension, right? Is going to really take me to a more esoteric or mystical place. And
right.
that to me quiets my mind more than anything. But I will tell you, I'm like you. I'm not up to slasher movies. I'm not in, I mean, I'm just like, even some of the TV series that are on right now, they got to be a little bit too much for me. Um,
Mhm.
but again, this is what you've done here is you've given people something beautiful to really look at. When we come back, I want to talk about the 12th house. I want to talk about the 12th house because there is much that has been said about the 12th house esoterically, and there is much that hasn't been said about the 12th house. And why do some people think the 12th house is perhaps one of the more powerful sneak peeks into your destiny? Let's take a short break. I'm not saying that. I want to hear what Tayannah says when we come back. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. I love that song. I was so depressed when I was a kid. I love that sad, ridiculously sad song. Benny, where'd you dig that up from?
Way deep, Pat. Way deep.
Woo!
A lot of records to shuffle through.
Woo! Oh my gosh, that is like you gave me like a super flashback to my first love. Oh
Oh,
my God, that puppy love thing with that song. What a heartbreaker. Oh my gosh. But that's another show. Today, Tayannah Lee McQuillar is joining me here today. And thank you so much for the books and giving those out. Thank you, Manzanita, for that. Tell people how they can find out about you, how they can work with you, how they can find out more about the impact of these water houses.
Okay, so you can find the book at innertraditions.com, or you can find it on Amazon, or you can find it at your local metaphysical bookstore. You can communicate with me on Instagram, or follow me on Instagram at Tayannah Lee McQuillar. Or if you're interested in a tarot reading or workshops related to astrology for mystics or the Hoodoo Tarot, any of my other projects, just contact me at tlmcquillar@gmail.com.
Awesome. We've been talking about the fourth, we've been talking about, but I want to jump over to the 12th for a minute. And the reason I want to jump over to the 12th is because I think it's one of the most misunderstood and least talked about houses. And yet people have said it's one of the more powerful houses. I would like your perspective on what goes on in the 12th house?
It's basically what you need to sacrifice in order to grow spiritually. That's why it's known as the house of loss. Okay, you can see it as the house of loss. Okay, depending on how you deal with change. If you're analytical, okay, if you're prone to self-examination. If you are, then possibly it won't be as painful because you're accustomed to kind of looking at yourself from, a bird's eye view. Okay, um, and if you're not, then change tends to be a little bit harder, right? When you realize that there's certain things about your behavior that is problematic, or things that you need to change, that could be a great loss if you are addicted to your own personality. If you always consider yourself correct. Okay, so that's basically what's going on in the 12th house. Okay, you're also dealing with secrets. You're also dealing with limitations. Okay, and also psychic abilities. Okay, it's sort of like unlocking. Like if anybody's played Super Mario or any other video game, there's certain boards. You can go to certain boards and you unlock a secret power. Okay, but it took sacrifice in order to unlock that power. You probably had to battle a million different little minions. You had to go through this dangerous board, for my gamers out there, right? But you made it through and you sacrifice, right? Sometimes you have to give up the powers that you had, and you have to go, especially with Super Mario, right? You have to go without that power. You have to be small, but it's just a matter of it can be done, okay? And once you have made that sacrifice, once you have gone through whatever that trial is, once you have altered your behavior in order to make that work, right? You have to time your jumps or whatever is required. I'm just using that video game analogy again. You have to time things correctly, or it's not going to happen, okay? Or you have to do something in terms of the behavior, okay? Or you have to hold the controller a certain way. It's no different, okay, in that way. And once you do it, you get rewarded, okay? You get rewarded, and that's how this kind of telling you what you need to sacrifice in order to get that Scooby snack at the end. Yeah. So for me, I have no planets in the 12th house. I have Aquarius in the 12th house, okay? So I needed, for me to grow spiritually, to not care if people thought that I was strange, that they thought I was batshit crazy. I needed to get over that fear, okay? I needed to get over the anxiety, the crippling anxiety related to that, okay? I just got there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, where I was completely, and I mean, I've always been cool. I've always been a very spiritual person, even as a little girl. Okay, and I've talked about that on Instagram. Okay, but just getting to the point where I really, really don't care how I am perceived by other people. Okay, I focus on the people that get it. I focus on my supporters. I focus on people that resonate with me, and I just don't think about those other people anymore. That took years of work.
Yeah.
And that's what the 12th house is talking about.
Man, that does take years of work. And, I was looking at this as you were speaking, and I was thinking, you asked me about the 12th house and my solar return. And as you were speaking about this, I was thinking about this unconscious level that goes on in the 12th house. There are things that we've probably been carrying all of our life, like you just described. And yet sometimes it's time. And when the time comes to really face those things and look at them, it is really pivotal. Some people call them tipping points, but it's also, as I hear you speak about it, there's a pathway to freedom for you. And when I looked at, your book, and I did look at Jupiter in my 12th house, really prominent in my solar return, like seriously a big thing. I didn't understand it until I read your book and said to myself, wow, that makes sense to me now. This makes sense to me, right? About what's going on as I see the year progress and where I am, and what things are influencing me, and what things I need to release, because we are all under psychological stress. And, for me, I realized that if I have that in this house, it's not going to go well. So I have to figure out a way to de-stress. And I've done that, right? But boy, I want to talk to you. This is a journey. figuring this out is a journey, but the way you describe the impact for yourself, once you discovered that had to be freeing for you.
Well, I've always been considered eccentric, right? Or weird, depending on the person. Okay, because these different factors, there are so many different factors that contribute to how people perceive you, right?
Yeah.
I never had a self-esteem issue as a result of people finding me weird. That's just not me, okay? I was always cool with Tayannah. People just weren't cool with Tayannah at certain points, and I was okay with them not being cool. Why? Because I'm an introvert. So my personality as an introvert protected me from feeling like, oh, I can't share in all the reindeer games, because I never cared. Okay, never cared. I never wanted to do group projects. For those that do Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ. I really don't care about belonging, but I still have to exist in the world. I still have to eat. Okay, so I do have to care about what people think of me to a certain extent, but it's hard when you process information much differently than other people, because the whole day becomes a facade. Okay, and if you have to work for a living, I was not born with a trust fund or any of this other cool stuff. Okay? So that means I would have to be out in the world in order to eat, in order to keep a food, a roof over my head. So that became a source of anxiety. It's like, okay, I don't care that these people find me weird, but I have to care about what they think to a certain extent, that I have to survive in this world.
That's right.
Okay? But then, like you said, so that creates anxiety in and of itself, not the self-esteem issue, but just, God damn it, I have to make money. Okay, so that integration, that really doing the work with the 12th house, it finally clicked, and I broke through, and now I don't care, and I'm happy.
Well, I'm going to tell you, look at Iona, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at this a lot closer, right? Because every time I take a sneak peek, I get a little bit more information about it, and the sense making part of it. And you're right, even though you may have some things going on, we're human beings. We got to get up, we got to take a shower, we got to go do whatever we're doing, and we got to make things happen in the outer world. And I want to thank you for taking some beautiful, beautiful esoteric ideas and bringing it down so we can understand it in our everyday lives. Thank you so much. One more time, how do we find out about you? How do we get a copy of your book?
Okay, so you can get a copy of the book at innertraditions.com, or you can go to Amazon or your local bookseller. You also can reach me, read my posts, follow me on Instagram at Tayannah Lee McQuillar. And for readings or information about workshops, reach me at tlmcquillar@gmail.com.
I'd love to know your personal message. What would you like to leave us with today?
Just remember that mystics are not these peripheral characters. Okay, mystics are the center of every religious and spiritual system in the world, no matter what their race, what the continent, whatever. Okay, it had to be someone that considered these things first before they were codified. That is what this is about. This book is for you. It is for you to analyze yourself in relation to the stars. Listen to the experts, but don't ever forget to consult yourself.
Wow. Hey, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for bringing this to the forefront and giving us a better understanding of what's possible. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, we're going to take a short break, everybody. We're not done yet. We're not going away. We'll be right back.